What's up, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Fish Lift Eat podcast. We thank you for joining in for another ride with us here today. We got a little bit of a different looking crew with us today. I'm very excited to get to introduce Chad first. Everybody knows Chad as the guy in the background that usually has a full time job at trying to make me look good and sound good. And God bless him for that. But we get to talk to Chad a little bit today. So what's up, Chad?
Hey, how's it going, Casey?
Good, man. So
Good.
we got a guest joining us tonight that I'm gonna give Chad the honors of introducing.
Yeah, absolutely. We were always talking about finding good fishermen, and bass fishermen, of course, is right up your alley. So, reached deep into our family and pulled out Jacob Burke. He's my cousin's son, and he's probably one of the best fishermen I've ever met. So, Jacob, it's good to have you with us, buddy.
Thanks for having me.
Dude, we're fired up to have you on here, especially me, because these guys like to overrun me with fly fishermen and talking about these trout fish and the trout fishing in the mountains and streams and stuff like that. And it's cool because I get to learn a lot of stuff that I'm not exposed to, but I've always enjoyed whenever we've been able to get another bass fisherman on here. So looking forward to really getting to chat with you.
Same here.
So let's give our listeners just a little bit of background about you, Jacob. Kind of what you do, how you got to be there, and what you got going on in fishing right now.
All right, so I'm from Colorado. I fish ABAs. I started fishing for bass, particularly in early high school, and then progressed all the way up to college in collegiate level fishing for a MLF off series, which is the American Bass. We've been fishing Pueblo and have been attempting to go out of state. We just hit we were just in Kansas not too long ago, and then now we're looking at either going out to Lake Havasu or Clear Lake in California.
Heck yeah, man, that's awesome. So you get to be a part of that. I know it seems like at least in the last 3 or 4 years, just college bass fishing in general has really caught a lot of steam.
It
Um,
has.
I mean, I know there was always those powerhouses that you used to, you'd see the guys show up at the Classic and on the Elite Series that came out of a few schools. But it seems like now it's blown up across the country. A lot more people kind of even coming from like the high school level too. Just more people wanting to get involved with it now, and more opportunity to kind of get involved in some high level tournament fishing.
It has definitely blown up in the past 5 years. It seems like every lake has more and more tournaments happening, more and more boats are showing up, and it's great. It's nice to see the sport boom, come to a giant apex that hopefully won't come down for the next couple decades.
Yeah, there's definitely there's two sides to the outlook on the level of fishing or on the attention that tournament bass fishing's gotten over the last few years. You got some people that complain about the lakes being so full and so many people getting into it now, but I kind of fall on the side like I love it. Like I think the more people that get involved with it is the more that we're able to kind of be able to contribute to these organizations and have input um, around the tournaments that we're going to that are going to be able to make them be even better 10 years from now.
Yeah, it's nice to see it happening. More people are getting into it, which is great to see. Because when I started back in high school, there was 10, 15 people that would bass fish that I knew entirely, and now it's in the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s that I know come out here and fish for bass, particularly.
Yeah, I'll age myself a little bit, but like when I was in high school, the thought of getting to have a school sanctioned bass fishing team was just non-existent. Like that was what I mean. We played basketball, baseball, football, all that. But like we were skipping practice and stuff to go fishing. So and now kids are getting to they're getting to experience that at a young level and even go to college for it. Much like yourself. where that was, I was getting in trouble in high school because whatever I was supposed to be doing, I was skipping out on it so I could go fishing. And
Yeah,
now,
it's become something crazy to see, especially growing up in the generation where it's starting to happen and high school is starting to let us go for it. And then college is now finally getting into some of these bigger tournaments with the BASS Opens. And I know quite a few guys that are going into MLFs that are just coming out of college and starting to get into MLF series.
oh yeah, I mean, like even me, going to some of these BFLs that I fish, like, I'm talking to kids all the time that are, you know, on, Auburn's team, Emmanuel's team, all these college teams that are, they're fishing their college stuff, but then they're also, you know, being like a sole member, fishing independently on these other trails, trying to make a name for themselves that way as well. And it's awesome. I'm kind of jealous of them to an extent just because of the time they're able to spend on the water.
Yeah.
They're, I'm having to work during the week and they're talking about how, being on the water 4 to 5 days a week, fishing all these different tournaments. I'm like, man, y'all just don't know how good you got it.
Yeah, I'm part of that crew that is thankful for that. We fish ABAs as our main, and then we've split off into do TBF and BSS as well.
Man, that's awesome. That's awesome. So, when uh, when did you start tournament fishing? How old were you?
I was a sophomore in high school, so 16 for tournaments.
Okay. At what? I mean, was that like a local level, or were you fish? Did you jump right into some big organization stuff?
Jumped right into ABAs, started off first tournament at 15 boats. So for where I'm located, it's a fairly mediocre sized tournament, but our lakes aren't 20, 30 miles long. We have 3.5 miles to fill 20 to 30 boats right now.
Wow, I think it's pretty competitive.
Very. 2 to 3 boats on one point usually.
That's crazy because like down here on Hartwell and stuff, blasting off at a 200 plus boat tournament's not is not uncommon at all.
No.
And then the bad part about that is you may be blasting off of a 200 boat tournament, and then there's a 200 boat high school tournament or an ABA or something like that on the lake the same day. So it's not uncommon to have 500 tournament boats on Hartwell on the same
Yeah.
day.
It's what we're trying to get into though.
Oh yeah, that's what makes it fun. And we keep all the gas stations in business around here with how much running around we have to do. But it's just part of it. So tell us a little bit about what you got going on at the college level right now. Kind of what's this season looking like? What's on the
Right
schedule?
now for Colorado, we're in the off season. We're letting the cold waters drop right now. We just got our first snow of the year that just hit a little bit harder. Waters are in the 50s right now for now. By the end of this weekend, it'll probably be in the high 40s, which usually is really good for that jerkbait bite, but it's not supposed to stop snowing for a couple of days. And then that's going to drop the waters, my guess, 45 degrees. Still catchable, but we've already been having our separation for a month. We've had a 40-degree change in air temp to a 20-degree temp change in water.
Oh wow.
So the lake's turned over, has been for about 2 weeks, and it's still good, but it's tough.
So when I know down here we see the turnover kind of start happening mid October. Is that kind of what y'all see as well, or is it a little bit later?
We usually get around mid to late October or early November around here.
So for our listeners out there that we're talking about a lake turning over. For anybody that don't really know what we're talking about, is think about like your water temperatures in your water columns and stuff, and that cold water and that warmer water kind of flipping places. You know, kind of oxygen and stuff being released out of the bottom of the lake, and basically changing over the water column, and that's a big transition that we have to deal with in bass fishing. just because of that where fish want to stage up, and what kind of cover they're setting up on. Now, whenever the oxygen levels are changing and the water temperature is changing drastically in there, it really affects with pushing them into those winter patterns. So, just for anybody that's wondering what we're talking about with lakes turning over, that's kind of the down and dirty of what it is. So, Jacob, um, what does what's the fall to winter transition look like there? Like
For
I know down here I mean you kind of hit on the jerkbait bite, like that's huge down here too. I actually just a couple hours ago I sat here and was having to put new hooks on my jerkbaits just because they've been getting chewed pretty hard lately. But when are you seeing fish already kind of getting into those winter patterns kind of early with y'all's drastic water temp changes? Like, is we schooling up deep? What are they doing out there?
so for our lake, we have a lot of walls. So we have a lot of walls and a lot of trees that sit off on heavy offshore flats. So we'll usually find our smallmouth and spots in 20 to 25, which fairly deep. It's hard to get a jerkbait bite off of them, but you can still pick off a few of the kicker smallmouth on some of the chunk rock and walls that they're just sitting on. The largemouth, they actually tend to sit 10 to 15 in some of the heavier wood that we have. So they'll send the brush piles or some of our thicker trees that are sitting 20, 30 feet, but they're suspended in 10 to 15.
I got you. What's the main bait fish source out there?
Shad and bluegill are our mains.
Okay, so that's pretty similar to what we got. So where I'm at, we're around a lot of heron lakes.
Yeah.
So everything I fish, at least 99% of it's all blueback heron, and kind of same thing though. You got, which ours it's pretty cool. When you get in the wintertime, you'll have largies kind of schooling up with the spots. So that's kind of the fun thing. I don't know how much forward facing sonar you use, but whenever I come up on some of these brush piles and rock piles and stuff, and have a good school out there, especially kind of into the winter transition, man, you'll see a school there, and you might have 40 pound and a half spots, and there'll be like a 4 or 5 pound largemouth in there with them, and it's always that kind of you drag a drop shot through them or something like that, and lean into it and go, oh.
Yeah, it's the exact same. We get a few largemouth that mix in. They tend to be like solos, but we actually get a lot of our smallmouth mix in with them too. So it's the same thing. You'll get a pound and a half to 2 pound spot, and you'll hook up into a 4.5 pound smallie
Yeah,
on a
that's
drop
like
shot.
my
And you're
favorite
not
thing
ready.
too. Yeah, that's my favorite thing. Actually, like, so the plaque I got behind me right there, I won it, and that's for big bass on one of the BFLs last year, and it was pretty funny. It was on a brush pile. It was about 18 to 20 foot deep on Hartwell, and we'd already caught like 2 or 3 fish out of the brush pile, and actually kind of caught it on like a Demiki rig, and all of a sudden like 5.5 pound largemouth just come out and gulped it.
Yeah, I had a similar thing. It was in our second to last tournament we just finished in, which was a second place overall. And we were catching 2 pound spots, pitching jigs up against a bluff wall, and like you said, the largemouth mixing with the spots, and I pulled a 3 3/4 largemouth on a jig off the wall. Same spot we were catching, your average spot, and then pulling a little bit bigger largemouth or a smallmouth. Same kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah, it's you never know what they're going to do when they get in winter and they get schooled up, but that's part of the fun of it. People, a lot of time people are getting off the lake at that time. At least they are down here. That's why I love winter fishing so much, because you don't have to fight as much boat traffic. But at the same time, some of the best fish I've caught have been in those winter months.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it's kind of whenever I'm pre-fishing for the season to kick off in January. I don't know when it kicks off out there. Like I think I think my first tournament, my first BFL this year is like January 27th or something up on Lake Kiwi. So spending a lot of time right now riding around on these lakes that we're going to be at in those first few, and yeah, you'll catch some fish that you're not expecting to in ways that you're not that they really shouldn't bite because they get schooled up out there and just do some weird stuff. But it's what makes it fun.
Yeah. Out here, our season usually starts in February or March, so not too much later. But during those tournaments, our waters are 41 to 42 degrees.
Oh
So
wow!
we're looking for 25 to 30 feet for suspended spots.
So I'll throw you a kicker here. The first lake that I've got to go to in January, it'll be cold. Don't get me wrong. I know last year when we were on that lake in January, it was like 27, but the water temp can in places will be pushing 60 because there's a power plant on the lake. So whenever they're cycling water through there, cooling off those like nuclear reactors and stuff, it like you'll have fish thinking about spawning in January on that lake. It's bizarre, but
Yeah.
it's really cool because you can go to different parts of the lake and it's a lot colder, obviously. So you find fish in those hard winter patterns schooled up, but then you'll find largemouth already pushing up like way shallower than they should be at that time of year, and that's where we go chase those kicker bites for that.
Yeah, we don't get the same water temps, but we've found some of our bigger largemouth and smallmouth shallower than they should be, even with 41 degrees. We found them in 10 feet of water and 41 degrees. And they're not
Yeah, I
supposed
know
to be
we
there yet.
yeah I know we've got a population of largemouth that are just they're resident shallow. Like I know we went through the dock. It was I mean they were getting close to pre-spawn. It was like end of February, and for whatever reason we had a real sunny day and we had some fish that were pushing up on boat docks pretty good on Hartwell. So we were skipping some docks and stuff like that, just kind of checking them in some areas. And there was a back little pocket on one, and I threw up on it. It was in inches of water, I'm not even talking feet. And like there was a 5 pound largemouth just up there, just a bluegill eater just hanging out up there. And by the color of the fish, you can tell like that fish has never been deep a day in its life.
Yeah.
That it's one if you wanted a fish to make a replica of, it's one of those
Ah,
because I mean he was so pretty. But I mean he was just light with the hard black marks down his main line, and you could just tell the fish they never move out, and it's just a matter of rolling up in the right pocket and finding those resident fish that are just staying there.
yeah. When I was in Kansas in early August, almost every single fish for the tournament we were in, which is a TBF between New Mexico and Colorado, every single fish came out of less than 2 feet of water. And one of the better ways to get them for me was a spinnerbait up in a foot of buckbrush. Because we found out on accident on one of the spinnerbaits I was throwing, I caught a crappie. I caught a crappie during my pre-fish, and we figured if the crappie are in a foot of water, it means those bass, especially some of those big kicker largemouth, are going to be sitting in that foot buckbrush, eating some bigger swim baits, or they're in the stumps.
Yeah,
And they were there. Multiple kicker, 4, 5, 6 pound largemouth are sitting in stumps.
it's pretty funny talking about the when catching bycatch. We actually went to whenever I was pre-fishing for that tournament last year in January. Checking. I found a bunch of bait up shallow, so we were checking it, and I ended up catching probably the biggest trout I've ever seen in my life. I ended up catching two of them actually. I've talked about it on here a couple times, but it was like that light bulb went off, right? Like, man, there's trout up here. That means if there's big trout, there's little trout too. So I bet we've got some trout eaters up here up the river right here. So then obviously I went and like tied a Huddleston on for the tournament and all kind of stuff. But never caught anything on it, but it was, the clues you can pull from catching a fish that has absolutely nothing to do with the target species. Catching a trout or catching a crappie or anything like that. It can clue you into what the bass might be doing, and that's a lot of times the difference in getting paid or not, or even winning the tournament, because finding those little subtle differences that's going on that maybe nobody else has picked up on.
Yeah. So one of the techniques we use to pre-fish out here is we'll throw a big glide or just a 9 or 10 inch HUD and see what fish peel off bottom. Because if
Oh yeah.
they're chasing the bigger trout or bigger bluegill, we're gonna sit on those fish a little bit longer. Because if they're willing to chase and even try and eat, those are the fish that we were trying to get for those tournaments. We've had multiple days where we weren't catching anything for pre-fish, and then we decided to slow down a little bit and fish big glide slow on live, and we'd see 10, 20, 30 fish come peel up off bottom in 30 feet of water, just come stare at this glide all
Oh
the way to
yeah.
the
That's
boat.
I can't remember. I think it was when we had Bailey Stone on. We were talking about that. Like one of my favorite pre-fishing lures is just a glide. Whether it be a Chad Shad or also like a big bodied like OG from Clutch, just because of the pulling power that it has. Especially whenever you're going up shallow, trying to find some productive pockets and ditches and stuff like that, where you can go find those largemouth. If you want to take an inventory of what's in an area, like throw that big bait. Like it may
Yeah,
not eat it, but you'll know exactly what's in there, because especially if you're going to utilize forward facing sonar, you can see what it pulls up out of the brush piles or off the bottom, or out from under docks or laydowns. It's crazy what those big baits will pull, but I feel like it's kind of a I think there's more people using them now than there used to be, but there's still a lot of people that are just scared to throw a big
it's
bait for
there's
whatever
not
reason.
many that are looking to throw them for a pre-fish or during tournaments. Especially up here, we have a lot more throwing soft bodies. So we'll
Yeah.
find a lot of people throwing either little Spro Chad Shad or the 68 HUD.
Hmm.
And they'll get bit, but you won't get a hookup. Because a lot
Yeah.
of the fish that are eating and chasing those are your pound and a half, 2 pound spots, which are having a hard time getting those trebles in or getting a full jig hook in. But we follow up with a 9 to 10 inch glide if we can. We've been using a swerve lately, and it pulls up some of the bigger largemouth that will come
Oh,
up and see.
yeah. That's man. In spotted bass fisheries, it's hard to get on like on a good glide bait bite, but it's probably one of my favorite ways to catch them.
Yeah, I had a buddy custom make a small glide specifically for the spotted bass we have. Brand new, took it out 3 casts later. I got 2.5 pound spot.
Yeah.
3 casts
There's
in, they were
one,
already on it.
no affiliation with them or anything, but one that I've picked up recently that I've started throwing that I've caught a lot of spotted bass on is the darter that Clutch Swim Baits makes. It's a very shad-like profile, and for whatever reason, it's a little bit slimmer than like a Chad Shad or anything like that, but it's still like a chop bait kind of thing, and it anything from I've caught 2 pound spotted bass to 7 pounds largemouth on it. Like if you're on a heron lake or just some kind of even like big gizzard shad or anything like that, that's one that's done some damage for me here lately.
Yeah.
Uh, so that's cool. All right, so we've hit on some techniques and stuff to give people a little bit of tidbits. So where what year are you in college?
I'm in my second year right now.
You're in your second year, so you got two more to look forward to after this. What's your fishing plans after college?
After college, I'm going to head down to either Missouri or Georgia and look at BFLs and MLFs. If
Go
that
dogs.
doesn't work out, I'm going to go down to Texas and see if I can get some of the opens for the BSS down there. or up north, I'm going to go check out either Lake St. Clair or Lake Michigan for some of the big smallmouth and largemouth.
So your plans after college is definitely to pursue, competitive fishing.
Yeah, try it for a few years. If I can get to work, I can get to work.
Welcome to the club. Basically, that's why I have to work multiple jobs so that I can keep up with my bass fishing addiction. But no, that's awesome. So, do you have you got a preference? You got BASS or MLF that you like the organization better, where you think you got a better shot of where you want to spend most of your time?
Probably MLF. I see more people in it. I know more people in it. I can I get along with the guys that are in MLF a bit more. I like how the rules are a little bit. They're a little bit tighter on everything than BASS as well, which is
Yeah.
nice to see.
So obviously I'm a fan of MLF because that's what I'm fishing primarily right now. Obviously, there's in the back of my head, I want to fish a classic. I want to fish the Elite Series, stuff like that, just because that's what we grew up on, or at least that's what I grew up on.
Yeah,
You
same
know,
here. I want to fish a
watch.
classic, but
But here's my thing. When I was sitting down one day, of like, okay, I'm going to dedicate a lot of time. I'm going to invest a lot of money into trying to make something of this. MLF just kind of had more options for the quote unquote working man, with the BFLs.
yeah,
Especially now, we had Trent Nugent on a couple of weeks ago. He's fishing the EQs. And that's his goal is basically he's gonna fish the EQs until he either makes the Elite Series or runs out of money. And that's awesome. I applaud those guys, but like I don't have 9 weeks of vacation that I can take a year to go, because that's the only way you can qualify for the Elite Series now is you've got travel all over the country and fish these 9 opens and finish in the top 9. BFLs at least creates you an opportunity to where you can fish close to home. Entry fees are affordable, payouts are decent, but then it allows you to qualify into more things. So if you pick your trail that's closest to home, on familiar lakes, finish in the top 45, then you can go fish the regional. Then if you finish in the top 6 of your people in the regional, you can qualify for the All American. Win the All American, then you're in Red Crest, the Toyota Series Championship, etc. So
yeah,
it opens so many doors to where I feel like the working man kind of has a chance to do something with that. A guy that I fished against last year, Emil Wagner. He kicked my butt all year, and he's just a hammer around here. Well, he won the All American, and now he's fishing in Red Crest next year in the Toyota. He fished the Toyotas as well, but then he's already in the Toyota Series Championship, and like he's going to fish at a high level, and was able to qualify into that stuff from BFLs, which now he's went and announced he's going to fish the EQs next year. So more power to him.
yeah,
But I feel like there's stuff about bass that I love that I think they do extremely well, and in certain things I think they do better than MLF. But I feel like for the position that I'm in, for what I'm wanting to try to accomplish, I think MLF gives me the best opportunity at that right now. Just because even beyond BFLs and the Toyotas, then you've got the Invitationals, then you got the Bass Pro Tour, which they're getting chopped down this year. But I just feel like it creates a lot more opportunity for people to go in and be successful.
yeah. They have a lot more different series that you can go fish because they're one of the few big tournament series that you can actually come up north and fish some
Mm-hmm.
tournaments. BSS, they only have it in Michigan for the most part, Michigan and then Northern California. But
Okay.
MLF is spread all the way to Colorado, Maine, Michigan, New York, which is nice to see because there's a lot of big bass up in Michigan and Maine, and they don't get touched. So it's nice to see people that know their lakes can get into something and then win it back, get the tournament experience without having to travel 30, 40 hours to come fish a tournament.
Yeah, yeah. That's one thing where I'm lucky at with the Savannah River Trail. I know this year they added Clark's Hill to it, and it's funny. I almost griped about it because it's like, oh, I got to travel 2 hours to a tournament this year, for the qualifier trail. But I mean that's where MLF kind of shines, right? Because that's the furthest I'm gonna have to travel for the five qualifier tournaments that I have to fish is 2 hours.
Yeah, for TBF, we had to do a 6 hour drive to go over into Wilson Lake, Kansas, and our next year we'll be in Mexico. So we're
Oh
going to have to
wow.
drive 10 hours just to get there for regional. So I'm a little jealous. Qualifiers 2 hours.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm complaining, but I'm not really complaining, right? Like that's what I love about MLF is they make it to where, I'm married with two kids, working full time job and stuff like that, but MLF still creates an opportunity for me to be able to go chase this dream of fishing at a high level. So I applaud them for doing that because that takes resources that we don't as anglers always take into consideration the staff that MLF has to provide at all these multiple events and all the planning that goes into be at all these different venues. Because what that means is if they're doing that for my area, MLF has so many regional trails or qualifier trails in the BFL series that I mean they're putting on a good operation. Right? They're putting on a very well planned, well managed event all over the country that way, and that takes staff, that takes equipment, that takes resources that you know for what they're charging us for entry fees is I mean is really fair in my opinion.
Yeah, that's one nice thing for us too is the AVAs. It's not too bad. Everyday person can come out here. I mean, the furthest thing you'll have to do is either drive out to Havasu or Clear Lake, but that's the Bass Cat Shootout. So you have that opportunity to win big and then see where it can go from there. So it's nice to see that because to qualify for that, you have to fish 6 tournaments with the same partner. But you can go out, fish, and travel to go try something new, go someplace new. I mean, Clear Lake, California, and Lake Havasu in Arizona are both big bass factories. They are well fished, but they're also well maintained.
Yeah, that's cool. So let's see. I'm wondering if up there, just kind of the way your lake's set up, what's your style of fishing? Like if you could go out on a lake and do catch them exactly how you want to, what does that look
So a lot of what I do is a little different. I don't like to go finessey out here, so everyone is switching over to a jig or a Ned rig. I'm actually going to pick up a big crankbait.
like? Okay.
I on Lake Pueblo, I have a really good crankbait bite through the fall and into the early winter, and I can get my limit in a couple casts, and I can find out where the schools are. I know how they're going to react to it. I can go a couple weeks in a row, fill a limit in an hour. It big crankbait out here is super underrated. Everyone I know it doesn't go over like a 5XD,
Hmm.
and I go up to an 8, and I'll whack them for hours.
Yeah. How much are you relying on electronics?
Not too much. So in the early spring, I'll rely on it a bit more. I don't really use forward facing to follow fish at all. I mainly use it to follow the contours a little bit tighter than what mapping can do because a lot of mapping systems sadly aren't up to date with a lot of the lakes in the
Hmm.
Midwest because we have a lot of drainage out here. So some of the points that you'll see that are saying 10, 15 feet will be in a foot or two of water. So I like to use
Okay.
my forward facing to find out where the contours are and go off of that rather than targeting specific fish.
I got you. I definitely rely on live scope a little bit more than that. Yeah, I know
If
that
I
that's
can,
a big that's a big debate right now in fishing, right? On if forward facing sonar should be banned in tournaments or not. And I'm definitely one of the proponents for it, just because I use it so much selfishly. But the way our lake's set up, I mean, I fish a lot of offshore brush piles and cane piles and stuff like that, and it just I don't know, it really helps me be more effective throughout the day, just to where I'm not spending time that I used to waste in an area. Um, wondering if fish are there, wondering if they're biting what I'm throwing. It allows me to be a lot more efficient now. So I definitely rely on electronics a lot on these herring lakes.
yeah, I mean, if I'm trying to go and catch some bigger largemouth out of our lakes, I rely on it a lot more because a lot of the largemouth are either sitting in 2, 3 feet of water in shallow buckbrush, or they're sitting 12, 14 feet on brush piles. And they'll eat an A rig okay, but I tend to get them better on a Demiki. Just
I love
hovering a
Demeter.
Demiki right over top of them, and they'll come up and smash it.
Demiki is one of those rigs that I never threw anything. Like, I mean, I threw swim baits and stuff, obviously, a lot, but then really go into that Demiki with like a 90-degree line tie and stuff. That was when I really started diving into live scope and things like that. That slowly become probably one of my favorite ways to catch them whenever nothing seems to work. Like, I feel
Mm.
like there's at any time of the year I can put that little swim bait right over their head and catch them.
My partner discovered it earlier this year in the spring, fishing with a couple buddies of ours from Missouri, and we didn't know anything about it up here. So this fall, when we got our shad spawn done and over with, we got the shad balls out in main lake, and they're finally getting into the secondary and primary points. We just start using that because every single time I throw a crankbait, little swim bait, or an A rig, we'd have 10, 20 fish just sitting right under the prop of the boat,
Mm-hmm.
and we couldn't get them to eat a swim bait. But we tried that, and we just started catching a little bit higher quality fish too.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's I mean, there's classics in the last couple of years that have been won on that style bait, right? Whenever Jason Christie won it up here on Hartwell, a very well known, well accomplished shallow water spinnerbait fisherman, and he's out here on Lake Hartwell fishing that sonar minnow, for suspended bass. Like, it's crazy what dangling a little swim bait over a bass does to it. It's you got to use it. Like,
Yeah,
if you're gonna be a well-rounded angler and be able to compete at a high level, it's that extra little layer of knowledge and experience you got to have to be able to adapt to your conditions and catch them.
yeah. I'm very thankful for how Pueblo fishes because a lot of the lakes here, there it's the same thing. You're throwing a little swim bait or you're throwing a jig all day, unless you're in the fall. Then you're throwing a jerk bait occasionally. But out here, we can throw a rig, you can throw a big crankbait, you can throw a spinnerbait, you can catch them on popper, spook, buzzbait, frog. Basically, if you think about it, you can throw them here. I've been starting getting into some big flutter spoons, and I started catching really good spots off of suspended points.
Hmm.
And I finally got into that, and it started working pretty well.
Yeah, that's one thing I try to like challenge myself at least every year, to pick up or really invest a lot of time in a new technique every year. Like this past year, it was jig and spoons, during the winter and even into the summer and stuff like that, just because it was something that I'd not primarily done a whole lot. I know a year before that, like, I spent a lot of time with a drop shot, which to a lot of people is probably a duh moment because everybody fishes a drop shot now. But prior to that, I had just not thrown it a lot, and so that was one thing that I tried to spend some time on, just to where whenever, however conditions are setting up, to where when I feel like that's something that's going to help me, at least I'm able to throw it and be effective with it.
Yeah, it's all a learning curve. You gotta learn and try and master something at some point because every lake is gonna have its certain days to where one day they are just gonna eat a drop shot or a jigging spoon. You're not gonna
Hmm.
have the bite available to go out and throw a jig on an offshore rock point. You're not gonna have that. They're gonna want that slower, bigger presentation.
Yeah, and that's where if being able to kind of bank up some knowledge is going to do us all favors in the long run, just because the further we go with this, the more we're going to have to travel to different lakes, to different bodies of water that are all going to be setting up different. And, being able to pull in and use different techniques is what's going to be the difference in being successful or not. So that's why, like, I try to go out on the lake every day and just feel like I'm an idiot because I want to. I always want to learn something. I always want to figure out something new that I didn't know before I went there, even if it's on my home lake. That's something that I can utilize in local tournaments too, where maybe it's something that nobody else is using, or maybe it's just a different kind of variation of a technique that everybody's using that opens up a whole nother bite that's not even known. So kind of always want to learn and get better and be a well-rounded angler is what's going to pay dividends in the future.
Yeah, I'm pretty thankful for having the availability to fish one lake, but it can fish so differently day to day. Because I can
Yeah,
go a day throwing just a blade bait and picking off smallmouth, 25 feet of water, to 2 days later I can go up in 2 feet of water and flip a Texas rig up under a tree, and there's gonna be a 2.5 pound largemouth sitting there.
yeah, you definitely got some diversity out there.
The only presentation I think doesn't work out here for me is punching. That's about it.
Really. Yeah, there's not a whole. I mean, well, somebody will crucify me for this, but like punching's not. I know you can go over into like Alabama and stuff, relatively close to me, and I mean it's a big player, but on the lakes that I fish, it's not a player. I mean, I'll flip like laydowns and stuff like that, but as for putting an ounce and a half tungsten on and actually having to punch through mats and stuff like that, I don't do that.
Yeah, I've been told I need to get a little bit better at it because ABA is supposedly going to expand here in the next couple of years to go not just in to Clear Lake and Havasu. They're thinking about doing the Delta, California Delta, for one of their regional tournaments as well. And
You got to
for
punch and throw
Havasu
big
and the
baits.
Delta, for Havasu and the Delta, it's you need to know how to punch.
Yeah,
That's just basis for those bodies of water.
yeah, that's punching in big bait territory right there. That's
Havasu up
awesome.
in the river, it's all mats.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome, man. Hey, we've talked a lot about techniques that we're using. So going into this time of year, at least on your bodies of water, if you were going to take a new angler, or say somebody that's not necessarily as well rounded in bass fishing as you, say you're going to take Chad here out on the lake. What's a technique or a high percentage bait that you would recommend people using, and you know how would it set up to where you would put them on to where they can go catch something?
So
what part of the lake, what kind of cover, and the technique that you would recommend them using to go catch a fish.
for my home lake, it's one of three things for the winter time. I'm going to either go up into our dirtier water up towards the western end of the lake and go with a spinnerbait up in 15 to 20 foot buck brush and have them bump the bush just to get a reaction strike out of them, or throw a Demiki rig around top and hover it, or a drop shot for our little bit warmer fish that are resident in that 10 to 20 range. If I'm taking offshore points, I'm going with a bigger football jig or a smaller finesse jig or a drop shot. Then if I'm going clear water, I'm going primary or for like a primary point or my dam, I'm going to be throwing a jerk bait or a blade bait to get either reaction strike off of a blade bait on the bottom for some of those stubborn fish that aren't going to come up. They want something slow but it's still making noise, or they're going to be on the suspended fish, and I'm going to throw a jerk bait almost all year for them.
Those are all very, very good techniques. And those are techniques that you can use anywhere in the country when the conditions are right. That's awesome. So, man, across all your time spent so far in tournament fishing or just in any fishing in general, throw us out what you think your best fishing moment was. Either your
Price.
biggest fish, your best moment, just what's your most memorable fishing moment that comes to mind?
It was on a little lake up in Michigan, skipping docks with some mag drafts. I was skipping mag drafts underneath some docks. And it's my biggest to date that I've caught, and it's just over 7.5. But I've had bigger follow up my mag drafts and glides. But that's the coolest one I've gotten so far. Is I was skipping a mag draft, pulled off 7.5 that we saw underneath the pontoon that was tied up to the dock, and it was just looking to eat up in shallow water. That same day, we were looking at offshore weed lines earlier in that morning, and they were eating a drop shot. It was fours and fives that were sitting a little bit deeper that were eating a drop shot, and he was a lone wolf. We're putting him at 7.25 to 7.5 pounds, just looking for a big bluegill or a big crappie up shallow.
Awesome. Yeah, on a total sidebar there, don't you love how good a mag draft skips?
Yes, they. I was surprised when I first started doing it.
They skip so good to be that big of a swim bait. I've got I've got the 6 and the 8 inch, and that's one of my favorite shallow water things. Which do you use the freestyle or do you use the one with the magnet
That one was a
on the bottom?
freestyle because I wanted it a little
Okay,
heavier. I was running
yeah,
a 3/8 ounce on that
I
one,
got you.
and that's why I use
Yeah.
out here too because they're a little bit deeper.
hmm I tend to use, the one with the magnet a little bit more, with the treble hook on the bottom to kind of the line through style, just because I feel like I was getting a lot. I tried to, initially, I used the freestyle, but I was getting a lot of just like fish swiping at it, kind of. So I switched over and started using that treble hook, and I feel like I hooked up to a lot more. But regardless of which style you use, those things they skip really really well, and they're really efficient at covering lay down stuff. So
They're
total
great.
sidebar there, but I love them.
They're a great pre-fish bait too because you can catch basically any size on it. You can catch a 10 incher or you can catch a 5 or 6 pounder.
Oh yeah,
They're great for pre-fish.
yeah. So sidebar there. Christmas time's coming up, y'all. Go get your favorite anglers. An arsenal of mag drafts. Oh man, that's awesome. Hey Chad, jump back on here. So Chad, what have you taken from this? What have does this inspire you to go buy you a big $90,000 glitter bomb and go hit the lake with us with live scope and just catch every bass in sight?
Oh, I think I need to go spend more time with Jacob and start learning the ins and outs. Just the terminology alone is something I have to learn. But I've been looking at your Instagram and I've been kind of going through some photos and such, and it's kind of blowing my mind with some of the pictures that you got of some of the fish that are out there. Jacob, tell us about this one.
And that
So that
striper there.
was one of the bigger wiper. I took a family friend out for a day to get him on his first ever one. which I got him to. I had him throwing a little swim bait off the back, and I got him a 7 pounder for his first ever one. Good starter fish. I was messing around with my live scope up here, saw a bigger mark, and that was on an A rig. That one came in at just under 12. That was a 12 pound wiper for that one. But in recent years, we've started catching them on chatterbaits a lot too, skipping chatterbaits,
Really,
which has been really fun.
that's pretty cool.
I have one other one that I had questions about. What about this one?
So same technique, but that one ended up just crossing 13.
My goodness. And what kind of fish is this total?
It's a hybrid, or what a lot of people call hybrids, but it's a striper mixed in with a white bass.
Huh. Wow. That's huge. Yeah, I've definitely learned that I need to spend a lot more time coming fishing with you.
Chad, you got to tell him. We spent all these people's time talking about tournament bass fishing and stuff. Let's throw a largemouth or a smallmouth or something up there just to let him plug that a little bit.
Let's see. How about
Something that we would put on the scales at least. Oh
So
yeah.
that was my first ever tournament that I was actually able to bring in a limit, and it was the day I found out don't ever trust a spotted bass on a scale
They will
because
fool you every time,
that
every single
spotted
time.
bass looks a lot heavier than that largemouth. That
Hmm.
largemouth is almost a half pound heavier, even though it doesn't look it.
Yep, that's why a good scale on the boat will do you wonders. On if you're on a lake that's got a lot of spotted bass on it, like have you a good scale,
I
because
invested in that.
if you don't, you will come into the weigh-in and be severely disappointed.
I started bringing in. I invested in that Rapala, the 15 pound scale,
The
the tournament
touchscreen
scale.
one,
I started investing in
yeah,
it
that's
because
the same one I use.
it's a lot more accurate, and I found out what fish I could cull a little bit better.
Yeah, yeah, because I know for a fact once I started using a scale like that, and it made me start thinking back of I've called fish that I probably shouldn't have just by the physical appearance of them like that. Like I know I've thrown a largemouth back for a spot that I should not have,
Yeah, I did that with some
just from
smallmouth.
knowing what I have now.
Some of the smallies
Yeah.
I've done that with because they're the same size. So like they'd
Hmm.
be 15 and a half, which would be a good starter fish, but which they would be a small coal. But we didn't have a scale though, so we are just going off of it like the visual, and we threw the smallmouth back because the spots just look bigger.
Yeah. Yeah. Get you a good scale and trust it. Well, Jacob, we've thoroughly enjoyed having you on. Hope to have you back on in the future, and we can kind of follow along with the rest of your college career, and then what you do afterwards, and especially if you ever end up in Georgia. Hopefully, we can line up at takeoff at the same time as each other if you get in some of the BFLs down here. But where can people follow you? You know, we just plugged your Instagram there. We looked at some awesome pictures. Where can people find you?
Same place, JT Bass Angler on Instagram.
Awesome. And one more time, which what college team are you on?
I fish for CSU Pueblo.
CSU Pueblo. Awesome. And then obviously everybody, you know, you're used to hearing it, but if you want to follow along, we'll be following along with Jacob as well at Fish Lift Eat Official on Instagram. And then so anything that you post in there, obviously tag us so that we can follow along with your adventure. And then as well as Fish Lift Eat Official on TikTok, kind of diving into that world too. Still learning that. That's a whole nother adventure there, but it's fun. But you know, we're going into holiday season here, so hopefully everybody's kind of, you know, been able to take advantage of some Black Friday sales and stuff that were going on, you know, at the end of last week. But you know, you got some loved ones that you got to figure out what to get them for some, you know, get your favorite angler in the family. Head over to huntlifteat.com and, you know, go get them a Fish Lift Eat shirt, hoodie, hat, whatever you might see, because I promise you they will love it. And whenever you get it, make sure you tag us in it on these socials so that we can see it out there, see it on the water, and see it in action. But that's all I got for us tonight, boys. Unless y'all got anything to add.
Nope.
No, nope. It's a pleasure having you on, Jacob. It's great to see you, and thanks for jumping on.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. Let's make sure that we let's get the season rolling here in the next few months, and we'll get you back on and have a little bit of a mid-season update or something. We can see that how good you're doing and how miserable I'm doing.
That sounds good.
So for all our listeners out there, we appreciate y'all jumping in for another episode this week, and we'll catch you again next Monday. But in the meantime, make sure y'all keep them lines wet. We'll catch you on the next cast. See ya.